Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Open Source Workplace Weekly Podcast, where each week we discuss the key topics, the trending topics, with thought leaders, industry experts, and share those ideas and thoughts with you. So thank you for joining us this week. Who am I? I'm your host. My name is Steve Todd. I'm the Global Head of Workplace at NASDAQ and the founder of OpenSourceWorkplace.com. So thank you again for joining us this week. Let's dig right into this week's agenda. Today we're going to discuss workplace evolution in APAC. We know that the APAC region is often way ahead of what we experience in the workplace in the US, so I'm really looking forward to unpacking workplace evolution in the APAC. War for talent, we're hearing that a lot of narrative on that about in the media today. Individual is the new workplace. Think about that, the individual is the new workplace. Interesting topic. We're going to dig into that and also the shared economy. So today our special guest, our thought leader is Dr. Paul Luciani. Paul is the Asia Pacific Real Estate Leader, Executive Director at EY. Paul is somebody who I've connected with recently who has shared a lot of experience and thought. He is a pioneer, he is a leader, he thinks deeply about many subjects, and that's going to come across in this interview. So I encourage you to watch all the way through because we recorded this video ahead of time, given the time differences. Paul's in Australia, I'm in New York, and what really is unpacked throughout this video is the evolution of work, the evolution of workplace, the evolution of functions and responsibilities and role within an organization. And as workplace leaders, what we need to be doing to connect ourselves with the businesses so we can deliver the right environment for the work that needs to be done. So before I do, let's dig right in. Let's welcome Paul to the show. So Paul, welcome to OSW Podcast. How you doing, sir? Great to have you with us.
Good to be here, Steve. Thank you very much.
No, I've been really looking forward to talking to you, Paul. I mean, I got to know you. Chris Kane was somebody who told me on the show to actually connect with you and talk to you, and I reached out, and you were very humble, quickly responded, and we got together. We got on the on a quick video link, and we just hit it off, and you brought a real great perspective that I really hope you'll be able to share with the audience, and I think you add a very unique aspect, which I'm really looking forward to digging into. But before we dig into all that, Paul, what should folks know about you?
Well, look, I've been in this workplace, facilities, construction, property, whole sort of different disciplines that have combined over the years for a long time now. So I'm a guy that's really a one-trick pony. That's what I've been doing for well over 25 years, really. And I've watched it grow. So what should people know about me? I'm a bit of a tragic when it comes to this sort of topic. Been doing it when it was not popular, now that it's popular. So yeah, I'm a little bit boring that way, but I think it is what it is. That's who I am.
See, Paul, people are going to hear your introduction and they're going to see that's why you two get on so well because you're both got kindred spirits because that's all you talk about. Those who know me think this, just think exactly the same thing. But you can't be as successful as you are and be a one-trick pony. So I think you're playing down yourself a little bit there. But what tell us some facts about yourself, fun facts about yourself, Paul. What do you like to do for fun? How do you like to relax?
Yeah, well, a few years back, work was becoming very stressful. I look after the Asia Pacific region. We have 65,000 people in my region at the moment with EY, and we have 23 countries. We have hundreds and hundreds of leases and offices. And when I was first asked to manage all of that, including all the indirect costs associated, so the procurement, the real estate, the construction, the design, it was all great until, a couple of years into it, it was like, wow, this is really stressful. So I actually took up something called astrophotography. So I dabble around in a little bit of astro stuff, and I'm prepared here. I'm going to actually chuck up in my background. Hopefully you can see it.
I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of my images that I took recently. As you can see, I go really deep into the nebula and I travel around to the darkest sites. Australia is very dark. Okay, we have some of the darkest skies in the world. So I'm very fortunate. Drive out 6 hours to a dark sky park, sit there for hours, sometimes by myself, and just stare at the universe and take these images. So I just thought I'd show you that and to explain what I do.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool. What got you interested in that?
It was a work colleague. It was also my grandfather. He bought a telescope when I was 3 years old, and I looked at Mars through it, and I was pretty well hooked from that point on. And then a work colleague said, hey, they've got these. It was the US who brought out these really spectacular automatic telescopes for the first time way back. Very expensive, mind you, but he said, look, it makes everything a lot easier. So I was hooked from that point on. Been doing it now for a long time.
Fantastic, fantastic. I love that. I love that. And I love how you say, I drive for 6 hours. Growing up in the UK, 6 hours is when you went to another country, that was so far away, but you're just popping out to get some quiet time. I love it. I love it. So you mentioned, you've been at EY, you look after the APAC region, and you sort of described how your responsibilities have grown. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of an insight into during that time, how has the workplace evolved? You can say it from a macro level within E&Y yourself. Completely up to you, mate. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and I have to say that Asia Pac is a very diverse region, and I think it's good for your viewers to understand that Asia Pac is a good test case. Always has been in industry because it has a convergence of totally different cultures. So you've got your Oceania culture, which is more akin to your traditional Western culture. Then you have your Greater China region, which is really again different to your Southeast Asia, and then you've got your Japan and then India as well. So I've been fortunate to work across all that. I think 33 countries over the last 15 years, 20 of them on a full-time basis, basically. So a lot of air miles. But these are the things I've noticed. In Oceania, they were very advanced in workplace. So where they had activity-based working, like 12 years ago, even more, say 15 years ago, they had activity-based working, where there were no offices. That was stripped away about 15 years ago, and they started with hot desking. Okay, in Greater China, total opposite. Offices rank, very small workstations. This is your workstation. This is where you sit, right? And this is what you do. And in Southeast Asia, it was even that on steroids. Very large palatial offices. I mean, we're talking half a floor. For some of the partners, and then chairs that you literally wheeled out for staff. And over the years, I've seen all of those regions move exactly the same direction, but at different paces.
And what caused that movement? Is it because we all thought people need to work differently? Has the work function changed? What's been the key triggers, do you think?
Well, I'd love to get really scientific about it, but really the common denominator, Steve, in all this is when the office life cycle comes up for renewal and you have to spend a whole lot of cash on doing something with it, then people go, oh, maybe we should get a designer in, or what's happening in the world, and they look around. It's like an afterthought, and then because they're going to spend money on it, and that's where you see these improvements when the designer and the architect is pleading with them to get modern, or is pleading with them for the latest and greatest. And that has traditionally been the trigger point, hasn't it? When organizations come to the end of their life cycle, or they've depreciated all their capital, and they just get all this information really quickly at the time of the construction, right? And the design, and they all get together from all parts of the organization and go, this is great. And then they build that, and it's stuck in perpetua for another 10 years or 15 years, according to the lease. So slow burn.
Slow burn. See, you're not painting a really cool picture for this progressive workplace experience that we've all been striving for, Paul.
Well, what happened? And so on that timeline journey, what happened was uh, business was impacted. So we need to be very clear here right now. Okay. We cannot have a workplace discussion in isolation. If you do that, you fail. You have to have a discussion about what has been taking place in the core business, in the economics, both macro and micro during that time. Because if you separate your workplace, thinking that your workplace is going to have any influence on business, you're kidding yourself. Workplace at best should follow business cycles. It shouldn't actually try and push it. So the example I give you is this. In 2016, there was a World Economic Forum in Davos, and they all got together and said, what's the future of the world, like in terms of the economy? And the resounding outcome of that meeting was, well, it's quite clear. Automation is starting to take over. Automation is starting to take over and displace, but improve our working world. It had nothing to do with workplace at the time. It was all about our working world. So automation is going to displace whole industry sectors. It's going to take time. And that was and is the journey of the world for the last 10 to 15 years. Okay, moving towards economics. So if you've got automation, so if you've got a world that is becoming flexible in what it does, it's generating income more with robotics, with more AI, then your workplace has to catch up. And the problem was that the workplace was not catching up. The workplace was still where it was. This is your seat, this is your office, yet the actual work that you were doing was more flexible, relying more on automation, and slowly but surely, invisibly, without us knowing, the actual organizations themselves were often running in this area where they were becoming self-sustainable no matter where you were physically. But we didn't know that until COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, everyone thought, oh, wow, that's the end of the world as we knew it. But we all know it was the actual reverse to that. When COVID hit, a lot of organizations, not all, but a lot of knowledge worker organizations said, wow, look at our profitability. It has not been impacted. The share market's doing really well. Why is that? Well, the answer is because people were solving problems for that business no matter where they were. And so now we're sitting back and looking at our workplaces and we're going, do we really need this, antiquated style of working when our business has already traveled down a path? And hopefully we need to connect those two together.
Yeah, and there's a lot in there, Paul. So we've talked about a little bit of automation. We've talked about the disruption that COVID's had, and I really want to come back to the automation and the robotics and things that you mentioned. I mean, but give us a picture of COVID, because the perception that we're seeing on the US looking at Australia is that there's been very little cases, and you're almost like the pioneers, if you want, of what the return to normality is going to look like. So, firsthand experience, what has that been like for you, for the company, for your colleagues, for your office?
Yeah, well, when COVID first hit, we we were in shock like everyone else, and our first response was to help our Greater China colleagues. And so we had to ship a lot of PPE and a lot of face masks over there because that's where fast forward 2 months, they were shipping stuff back to us because it spread, and we went into total lockdown as well. But from a workplace perspective, once the shock started to subside, most people were able to function normally. And so I think the success of Australia has been that along the journey of workplace, we'd already had flexibility in most of our organisations. We'd already had, most people in Australia have a reasonable accommodation standard to work out of. Okay. And we just completed our national broadband rollout. So we had pretty good data connectivity throughout the country. So things were aligning. And like I said, Australia and Oceania was more advanced than other nations, and we'd been able to build in employment terms on the whole, of flexibility. So people were already working 2 or 3 days a week from home. So when COVID hit and we were all asked to go into lockdown, we didn't really miss much in that respect because we were ready for it.
Mm, mm. And I'm glad you clarified the flexibility, because that's what's going through my head. What do you mean your flexibility? But it was already factored into people's work life cycles, right? That's pretty interesting. So how has that 2-3 day working at home or in the office, how has that transitioned to where we are today, and what do you see coming over the next few months?
It's funny. Before COVID hit, Steve, because I'm the real estate guy for Asia Pac, I'm always asked to come up with what's the next thing. So this is a couple of years before COVID hit. It was like, we have this big major, our second largest office, we need to do something with it. We have a couple of years to think about it. And it was obvious. It was obvious which way we were going to go. We were going to go to this thing called a shared economy, which means, the office is no longer the destination of your work. What's important is, what are you working on? What problem do you have to solve? Okay. And then where do you need to be? At the moment, still, even when we emerge out of COVID, I'm going to answer your question about return to work. It's still like, well, you've got to come to work. This is the office. But really, no, it's not. It's, what problem are you solving? Especially for EY, we have a bunch of clients, right? What problem are you solving? Who do you need to be with? And then we'll tell you where you need to be. I mean, it's totally the reverse. So a couple of years before COVID, we put this forward, and it was quite radical at the time, and called it the shared economy. I got a few other guys that I've known for a while on board, some consultants, and we drafted this concept where the artificial intelligence would tell Steve, based on the client problem that he needs to solve and his team, where he needs to be at any given time. So we had a HQ portion, and then we had a satellite portion, then we had obviously third space agile. And this was a pilot, and we're all excited about it, and then COVID hit. Well, that's where we're heading. We are definitely, now that COVID's done and settled, and we're trying to come out of it, that is the new working place. And the catch cry 2 years ago was, the individual is the new workplace. The individual is the new workplace. And no matter what maturity level organizations are at the time, that's where they're heading. It's empowering the individual to be the workplace to solve the problem. I mentioned Davos 2016, the Economic Forum. They basically said the next revolution will be the individual as a problem solver. And that's, COVID's magnified that. It hasn't accelerated it. It's just magnified it. Organizations will have to revert back when they come back to work. Organizations cannot leapfrog the journey. It will be dangerous for an organization to go, well, we're just going to leave all our people at home, because it is a journey, and there's a body of learning and a conditioning and a cultural fit that takes time for you to move towards your individual as a workplace. You can't just go, COVID's hit now. We used to come in and have a seat. Now you're not, because that could do some serious damage to the organization. And that is why you see Google and Microsoft and other organizations have totally different stance on return to work. Totally different, because it's not about one size fits all. It's about, where are you on that journey of trust, empowerment, culture, security, client, right? This is a journey. There's no shortcuts. If your organization wasn't on that journey before, this is the biggest wake-up call in your life, that the individual will be the workplace. It will be problem solving. That's the next revolution as more automation takes over. And all COVID done is magnified it. You will have to revert back to where you were before and continue that journey.
It's really interesting that you say that, that you have to revert back so you can continue. And I understand the risks of not going through that process, right? You have a culture, you have a way of people working. There's leadership who've, cultivated that sort of environment and that ethos and philosophy within an organization, and they need to basically create that story and that narrative of how things progress. I haven't heard anybody say that before, so I do think that's really interesting. What do you think is the risks for organizations that maybe don't take that sort of step?
Well, before COVID hit, Greater China is a region of mine, and we did some huge work over there. And I always, whenever I used to go to Greater China, and the overwhelming sense of difference in workplace was something that I just could not change. And when I first started working, I thought, that they should be more flexible. They should have more working from home. They should have more, sophisticated IT design, get the app software happening, and I had some very willing and eager, intelligent, smart leaders over there listening and wanting that. But we'd always somehow revert back to something a little bit not as fancy, not as flexible, not a, and I used to, feel not like I failed, but I used to feel confused until I walked the floors of one of our mainland China offices and I spoke to one of the service line leaders and he told me about his clients. And for the first time ever, and this is a big, big lesson for your viewers right now, for the first time ever, I realized something. Your workplace has to be aligned to your product. If your workplace is not aligned to your product, then why bother? Now, in Greater China, most of our clients were heavy industry, process orientated, small little things that we need to do for them that added up to a lot. And so we needed people that were focused on tasks that could complete, get their direction complete. And it was a very great, and we are still one of the leaders in that market right now to this day. If you had a flexible arrangement in that workplace, you would be disrupting the key flow that client base, collective client base, many companies, not even state-owned, but multinationals, needed that collectivizing of people in one spot doing process work. So, you've got to look at your product. What is your core business? And not just, hey, one size fits all on workplace.
It's sort of what I'm hearing is the process is actually what comes before the workplace, right? So we have our people, we have our process that is everything you just articulated. From there, then you provide the workplace that actually encapsulates that environment to make those folks the most productive. Now, whenever you say that, we're moving to an individual based, economy, and we have to go through these iterations and journeys, is there a risk that if organizations don't go through that iteration too quickly, employees may find an alternative environment that fits their needs?
Once again, pre-COVID, I did a doctorate 15, 16 years ago. And when the professor said to me, look, you need to choose something that's actually going to contribute, don't waste our time or yours. This problem came to mind, and it was, I can never get it right, getting the right person for the right job. I could never get it right. It was always like, should I outsource that? Should I bring it in-house? You'd make a decision, and it was great for a little while, and then you'd see it start to unravel. And then you'd probably go, hey, I'm going to outsource that to somebody else, right? And then and we saw in the 80s and 90s huge amounts of outsourcing take place, especially in your native country in the UK with the Thatcherism, and there was a lot of outsourcing. That was a correction cycle. And so I chose to do procurement cycles. And I learned something after 7 years of doing it. And that is that you cannot set and forget your resources. You might get an employee, Steve, and he may or she may be perfect for that role, but that doesn't mean that the organization is going to fit that employee for 10 years or 15 years. It doesn't mean that the individual is going to fit, but what we all did because of the Industrial Revolution, we towed the line, we stayed true and faithful, we rode out the cycles, we looked for entitlement in our workplace. Give me a bigger office. Can I have a car spot, please? How about a bit more money? Okay, that appeases me. All those symbols are coming to an end. All those symbols coming to an end, because what COVID has done once again is magnified a very simple truth. And that is, Steve is a problem solver. He's actually not, a problem solver for XYZ company. He may be now, but also Steve has a uniqueness about Steve that solves these problems, which also can solve problems outside of where he is right now. Doesn't need the physical workspace and the culture because he's done it from home behind a screen. He got a pay rise because his company said, wow, you're 50 miles away and you solved this problem. So the lights come on in Steve's head and he's gone, well, if I can solve a problem there, I want more. I want to solve more problems. But my company doesn't have any more for the next 6 months. It doesn't have any more problems to solve. This is that cycle I was telling you about. And
Hmm.
these cycles are actually predictable. Um, but this company over here, a mate I know, he's got the same problem that I want to solve. And so what you're seeing portability and flexibility because the individual as a workplace has more choice and also an understanding of their strengths and their weaknesses. And that's what COVID has done. And this was predicted in Davos 2016, that the individual problem solver, the rise of the gig worker, these things are creeping more and more. And it's great because it means that, I'm here to help the economy. I'm here to have work satisfaction. I'm not here because I have a big office. I'm not here because you provide me coffee at work and you can try and keep me, but I get most of my life satisfaction from solving problems with other people at the right time.
I love it. And as an individual who's hearing that, I can I say to myself, yeah, I love that idea. I love the fact that what I'm being valued from, I'm learning what I'm doing right now. I'm adding value and contributing to the organization. And then I'm also then identifying other places where I can go and actually add value, take the experiences and just improve and iterate. How long do you think it's going to take us to get to that point where we have that? I know, I see you rolling your eyes, going, "Okay, here we go. How long is this going to take? How long is a piece of string?"
It is, well, actually, it's a very good question, right? Look, let me share one stat with you. Since 1940, the Department of Labor and Industries in the US has been tracking the return on labor unit. So let's just say 1 hour of labor unit was worth, I'm just going to make it up, in 1940, 1,000 US. So across the board, you get $1,000 US of a labor return unit every time Steve does something. All right. That has been declining at a constant rate downwards. Okay. Since 1940, the trend of labor unit return is going down. If you're starting up a business and you said, I need 20,000 people to run it, you might get the efficiency day one, but holding those 20,000 people and then keeping those 20,000 people. And then it's just going to decline because the stats are showing that the Industrial Revolution peaked. We needed lots of people to do one job. Those days are set. We have automation, we have mechanization, all of our industrialized institutions have been established. No longer is labor unit important. So how long is it going to take? It's going to take as long as businesses realize that if they want business health, they're going to have they have to have a constant flow of problem solvers come through their organization. And there has to be a front door and a back door, right? And it's no longer, you stay here, this is us, let's run this together and then keep. No, it's like the fluidity to keep my business alive. I need fresh ideas. I need the right person at the right time. Now, impossible without technology. Impossible without technology. And I've done a lot of research about the rise of technology and the rise of what I just said. People thought that technology went off and just got developed because you could. That's not what happened. What happened was from the IBM mainframe days up until now, as what I just said to you about the decline of the Industrial Revolution and then the rise of outsourcing back in those days, that demanded IT solutions, and smart people wrapped IT solutions around it. Laptops, mobile phones, wide area networks, the web. These things were a result of the demand to keep industry going. Okay, right? And now we're seeing the same thing happen with all the prop tech out there. We're seeing AI, right? We're seeing all these things that are starting to place people in the right place at the right time. So that, how long that will take, I don't know. But is that the journey we're going on? Absolutely.
Yeah, and I knew you were going to come back and bring robotics and AI and all into, because I think that's just an accelerator, right? Because I think there's a lot of, we see that. So, I mean, I want to circle back to, some of the things we talked about. We're moving to this individual economy. On the back of COVID, flexibility that people are really desiring now. Um, War of talent. And, it seems kind of interesting that we'll spend a lot of time talking about economics, the Davos, and we're workplace guys, but actually we understand the sort of the war of talent and all that plays. So how do you think the sort of the ways of working workplace is really going to help organization in this war for talent?
Yeah. Well, our role as workplace people really is to be able to provide the right work environment, a lot more than what we've been doing previously. You can't just fit out an office, take a 15-year lease, take 20,000 square meters, fit it out, job done, you go there, here's a coffee maker and whatever. Those days that we now need to be thinking especially about the third spaces. So yes, we are still going to need our headquarter core offices, no two ways about it. But we're also going to, of course, redesign those to be more collaborative, depending once again on the pace of your organization and the client base you have and the industry sector you're in. You're still going to have to do that. Okay. And I think most of us and most of your viewers would get that as well. We need to redo that. But then there's this element of, if you look at your individual as a workplace, it starts the moment they get out of bed. What role do you play in the working experience of that person from home? What role? At the moment, no one wants to talk about it. But if people are going to spend 3 or 4 days a week at home, who's going to manage that? Is it going to be the workplace person? Because if you don't manage them from the time they get up until the time they go to bed, and some other company is willing to do it, you're going to lose them.
Mm.
They're going to, if they've got the capacity to wake up, and here's my typical scenario I share. I get out of bed, first thing I do is go to my smartphone or my smartwatch, and it says, "Good morning, Paul. Today we've set up a space 3 kilometers away. This happens to be an agile space that we've found for you. 2 of your team members will be there. Your client's going to meet you there at 10 a.m. All your documents are on the cloud waiting. And after that, you've got 4 hours of free time. We really recommend that here are the exercise regimes we've got. Look, we've given you a gym membership here, whatever. But after that, we'd like you to come into the headquarters because we've got an association industry event. We've organised an Uber, blah, blah, blah." Facilitated, pre-thought, and linked tangibly to my problem-solving ability and my working outcome. And it repeats. Eventually, we'll get to the point where workplace will go, today you're working for company XYZ. You will be on that gig for 3 months. After that, right, we predict that you'd be better off in this industry sector because the problem that you're solving there suits the aviation industry, and these people are looking blah, blah, blah. And that facilitated way of life is where we're heading. And so what do workplace people need to do? Consider the individual as the workplace. Make sure that you understand the technologies that enable that. I spend most of my time now in calls around technology and how that it's going to flow through. And organizations treating individual as the workplace will get a lot bigger dividends than individuals being treated as places they can go to sit on a seat.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the technology aspect. I'm a big data guy. I love looking at data. I love data sort of dictating how we do things. And from an individual perspective, who wouldn't want to work in that environment where you're being told what to do, when to do it, in a sense of it's the good for you, right? You have your smartwatch. I have a ring that tracks everything I do, so I know from a health perspective when I'm ready to go, when I should take a rest, when I need to sleep, all these different things, right? So why can't we have that in the workplace?
Exactly. Well, I don't want to call out brand names, but as LinkedIn gets smarter and smarter and smarter, and it's. I mean, do you remember the days you had to send a paper resume into a headhunter and and draw up a list and go? Yeah, those days, mate. People just go onto LinkedIn now and they can see everything. It's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, it is, and sort of with that and tied to that, there's actually something that came up that Chris Kane mentioned during his interview. He says we're living in an era of choice. What does that mean to you?
Well, what we didn't have as much choice previously than we should have. Okay. Today, for example, if you just think about the physical workplace, I remember the days when I had my own workstation and my own pictures hanging up on it, and that was it. I couldn't choose to sit anywhere else. And then we went from that to sit anywhere you want. And then from there, we went, look, we can go to any floor we want, which was revolutionary as well. So more choice. And then after that, it was like you can work out of any office you want. For me, it was like I could work out of any office in Asia Pac I wanted to. So that was a lot more choice. And then they said you can work from home anytime you want. So the choice is just incrementally now, and I think now we're going to face the choice of, well, can I work in any organization I want? That will be the ultimate choice.
But what trends are you seeing, are you observing that actually is causing you pause to really think right now?
Yeah, unfortunately at the moment, and it's a natural reaction, there's a binary discussion going on. Home, work. And, you would have got the flavor for what I'm saying. People just don't stay at home and go to work. And if they do, that's depressing. People need to be able to home, headquarters work, and everywhere else you need to be in your day. If we're only talking about problem solving, everywhere you need to be to solve that problem. But if we're talking about the individual, everywhere you need to be to have maximum well-being. So the problem, and it was a problem as soon as COVID hit, but now I'm seeing a lot more now. People saying, okay, so if we bring all our employees back, say half the time, so they're in here half the time, and they're at home half the time, okay, job done. No, that's not true. If you've got people working half the time at home and half the time at work, most of those people are going to go, I need to work somewhere else. I can't just work from home anymore because, the in-laws have moved in. I can't go to the headquarters because it's not on my day and it's too far away, because a lot of people have actually relocated during COVID because they can work remotely. So I need a third space. Give me a third space, right? And so third spaces are going to be the make or break criticality of this.
Mm, mm,
And it keeps me up because, even our organization struggles with that. Agile co-workers struggle with it because their model really was a commercial office that you use someone else's commercial office. They need to reinvent themselves now to be that third space, that true third space, that flexible pay on demand third space that is out in the suburbs, that is in the cities, that is everywhere, that captures those reasons why you can't work from home, you can't be in the headquarters. So that's something that we're working on.
mm. So those third spaces, who chooses those third spaces? Do your other real estate colleagues, do your employees have the choice because there's an IWG or a WeWork or whoever, around the corner, I want to go work there. Who makes those choices?
So we are wrapping our control around that to make that more like a managed service, more like here is an option, or you called it choice, for you to work from. And we have facilitated a range of places for you, okay, like a managed service. Okay, at the moment, we have some people that just go off and work out of co working and they might expense it, or there might be whole teams that pick it up because they don't want to do it in the office, it's close to their client site, and so they just do it that way. But we're striving more and more now to give some real credible thought, and we've got a number of projects underway, and I'm not the only one. There's some major banks out there that have just announced in Asia Pac that they've done the same thing, is to treat this like a managed service. So in other words, to answer your original question, what do we as workplace people do? That we invent managed service provision for spaces outside of our workplace.
I'm fascinated by the third space, the co-working service, the office, call it whatever you want. I look back 12 months ago, and I don't know what your perspective was, but I thought they were done. And as we come out of this, actually, they're probably going to be the market segment that's actually going to do the best.
Yeah, so let's let's try and uncouple a couple of symbols for a minute, and your viewers will probably understand what I'm saying. Let's uncouple agile co-working, away from home working, away from your head office, because those three, that triangle is going to merge more and more and more in a healthy way. Okay, in a healthy way. So landlords are going to reinvent your space. You may have a lease for 15 years, but they may come up to you, which has happened to me recently, and said, hey, you know what, I know you're on the hook 15 years, but I know you're only going to bring back 50%. Hey, why don't we create a co-working space out of it to make it more flexible? All of those things, and the agile
Mm.
workers are going to be the same. They're going to be exactly the same, partnering up with major institutional landlords, creating campus style arrangements. Okay, it's all hands on deck right now. Everybody is going to have to work. And like I said at a conference the other day, we need to partner up with each other more now, break those walls down now. Otherwise, one of us will be left behind.
I'm just really interested to see where this goes, Paul. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think there's many organizations are looking at it, and I think also if I'm somebody who's listening to this, the fact that you've just given me the confidence, I don't have to make the decision today because actually it needs to be a journey for the organization. It needs to be a journey for our product development. It needs to be a journey for everything that we're doing. So I appreciate that. But as we wrap it up here, Paul, I just want to sort of say, is there any last thoughts, final thoughts that you wanted to leave with the audience before we finish up?
Well, just one, and that is during COVID, a lot of business leaders got interested in real estate.
Yeah.
Um, Rightly so. Okay, rightly so. No begrudging, rightly so. And there was a real period of educating, all right? Them and they educating us. It just so happens that I knew a lot of those leaders around APAC and I understood their business. And some of them didn't really know, as much as what they should about real estate. But there wasn't time wasting, but there was a time where we had to educate ourselves because you need to understand their business. They need to understand what real estate is. Going forward, if you do not have a relationship with your CFO, your COO, if you don't have a relationship with service line leaders, if you don't talk to staff that are end users and find out who their clients are, you will have a hard time in your role because you are not just delivering fancy workstations, you are enabling a core business somewhere. And so my strong advice is understand the core business of your organization, get to know your leaders and tell them how important you are. Tell them that at the moment and more, this sort of stuff can make or break. And they need to have a relationship with you just as much as you need to have a relationship with them. That would be my
Fa-
final thing.
Fantastic, Paul. Fantastic. Great way to wrap things up. Look, I want to thank you for your time. I know it's early for you in Australia, so I appreciate you giving time. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with the Open Source Workplace community, and I hope we get to see you very soon, man.
No, thank you very much.